Hitting the driver more consistently is a surefire way to improve your golf scores, and yet most of you don't really know where to start when it comes to learning to hit this club more consistently. So today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tips and drills that you can use to improve the quality and the consistency of your driving. The driver is the longest club in the bag, and it also has the longest or the biggest swing, meaning the amount of rotation you have with a driver swing is more than you have with, let's say, a 7-iron. But in order to be able to incorporate that extra turn into your swing, you need to position your body in a way that encourages that. And the simplest thing you can do if you struggle with rotation is to take your feet and turn them out. Turning your feet or flaring your feet out helps to open up your hips and gives you more range of motion both on the backswing and into the follow through. There's so many people I see struggling to even get the basics of the rotation piece correct with driver, and a lot of it comes down to them standing and having their feet turned straight or even pinned slightly inwards. If you're not sure whether this would work for you, you could stand up right now wherever you're watching this video and just place your feet into this straightforward position and try to rotate, try to turn, see how much motion you can get from your pelvis and your torso. You could do it in a golf swing if you wanted to, but you don't need to. Just get a sense of how much turn you have, and then immediately flare your feet out, both of them, some 20 to 30 degrees. Point them both outwards, and then have that same motion, try that same movement. I think you'll see how much more free it is, how much easier it is to move your body when your feet are turned out. That's one of the simplest things you can do to begin to become a better driver of the golf ball. The second thing to discuss would be ball position, which, as most of us know with the driver, is different from the other clubs. We put it further forward in our stance. That's because we have the ball on the tee, and we're actually trying to make contact with this ball more or less at the bottom of the swing arc. And the bottom of the swing arc is directly under the lead shoulder. So really, in terms of ball position, we should be placing this ball directly under our lead shoulder. Now, most people use the left foot, the left heel as a reference, and that's okay, but it isn't always correct. So do be careful how you're positioning yourself with regards to your ball position relative to your lead shoulder. If I was to be someone who's set up with a particularly wide stance and leaned back at setup to get my head behind the ball or create the spine tilt, it may look like I've got the ball opposite my left heel. That may seem quite standard or normal, and that would be considered correct ball position. But in reality, relative to my lead shoulder, this ball is way forward. Okay, it's a good 2 to 3, maybe even 4 inches ahead of my lead shoulder. And what that's going to lead to is a swing that's excessively across the ball, out to in, which generally produces slices. And you may find also that you're hitting up excessively on the ball as well. So just a quick tip to make sure that whilst ball position relative to the feet can be a useful reference, it can also be slightly misguided. You may not be getting the full picture. Make sure that your ball position with the driver is set up directly under your lead shoulder. That will produce far more consistent results. The next thing you should be looking to do if you want to become a more consistent driver of the ball is to ensure that your swing path or swing plane is more neutral or uniform. What do I mean by that? Well, for so many poor golfers of the ball, as they make their backswing, they tend to lift their arms excessively off their body, making the arm plane or the club path here too steep or too vertical. That's actually often related to the first tip I mentioned earlier, the fact that they don't have their feet turned out and can't create the necessary rotation that you need to have in the backswing, leads to this lifting of the arms in an attempt to artificially lengthen the swing, to feel like you need to make the swing longer so you have power. But inadvertently, that's not creating more power. In fact, ironically, it's losing you power. So not lifting your arms would be a really good way to become a better driver of the golf ball. And a great way to practice that would be to grab your golf towel, roll it up and place it under your arms. So you have the connection between your upper arms and your torso. And you should be able to go and swing all the way back make a full backswing, and swing back down to the ball without dropping the towel. That's going to require that you keep this connection between the arms and the body. That basically means no lifting of your arms. And in doing so, you'll be able to utilize the full potential of the angular momentum built into these clubs. The fact that we stand to the side of the ball and we swing on this arc, this angled plane, if you like, that's where so much power is stored, but also from a consistent strike point of view. One of the biggest challenges you have with driver is hitting the middle of the club face consistently. Golfers who hit all over the face are, by definition, very random golfers and drivers of the ball. If your strike location is inconsistent, then your driving is going to be inconsistent as well. Conforming to the correct plane, as I'm doing here with the towel under my arms, not only helps me hit straighter, further, but it also helps me hit the club face, the center of the club face, more often. And with driver being the fastest swing, as I've already mentioned, it's also the one that's going to have the most volatile wrist action throughout the swing, but particularly through impact and into the follow through. What happens in this part of the swing is very difficult for you to feel and sometimes very hard for you to control, but that's the part of the swing that's really dictating how consistent you can be, because that's what's controlling this club face. When it comes to understanding how to improve your wrist angles through the swing, using the HackMotion wrist sensor is going to allow you to see some of the things that we just can't see with the naked eye. I'm going to start with a drill that helps you with the follow through. I've already shared a drill like this on a previous video I've made with HackMotion on some of the best ways to use alignment sticks, some drills you can use for alignment stick training. You should check that out if you haven't seen that exercise. But it speaks about having the arms and the club and the wrist here extended for as long as possible into the follow through. Okay, so mimicking or mirroring this position right here. Now, if I take a look at HackMotion, what I'm going to see is when I've got my arms extended here, I've got around 0 degrees of extension or flexion. That means there's no twisting, open or closed of this club face. So using that end point of the swing, using that specific follow through position where the arms and clubs are parallel to the ground, my body has turned through about 90 degrees with my shoulders here. As I say, the arms and club are more or less parallel to the ground. And the wrist is flat. The wrist is flat. The wrist is not extended or twisted. It's not rolled or turned. I'm able to control the club face. Now that's at a very slow speed. I'm doing this drill slowly to teach you and to help me feel exactly where I'm stopping. So having this club face control via a specific stop point in the swing, and the way that you would then transfer that feeling into a drill and into an exercise is you would hit drivers more or less full backswing. You can go back as far as you're comfortable with to begin with, but at the same time knowing that the goal here is to stop on the front side with this nice wide follow through, this wide arc, this full extended radius of the swing, which is going to improve the quality, the location of the strike on the club face, the consistency that you're able to hit the center of the club face. We've already talked about how that will make you a more consistent driver of the golf ball. And having that specific end point will also help you to control the club face. Now, I'm not saying that this is the end of your swing, okay? You're going to progress and develop this into a longer swing. But to begin with, learning that feeling of the wide follow through, the radius management as I like to call it, is really going to enhance your driving. So many of you coming through the ball look like this with the driver. I mean, there's no way you're ever going to control that. You might hit one good shot in 20 if you're lucky, but you're never going to be consistent. The reason you're not consistent, these wrist angles and arms break down. This specific drill and this finish position is teaching you how to get rid of those crazy arms and wrists and build in some more structure. So I'm hitting there, feeling like I'm just keeping this long, wide arc follow through. It's a pretty nice drive. It's gone 200 yards. You can see it's not full speed or full distance, but I was able to really maintain good wrist structure through the ball. If you did that enough in practice, you'd find that a lot of that feel would transfer out to your full swing. So even though your follow through would ultimately get longer, the benefits of the drill, keeping the arms straighter and the wrists more stable for longer, would start to seep into your driver swing. And once again, that would help you to become a more consistent driver of the golf ball. And the final thing to try and strive for, which is sort of an extension of that follow through drill, is this flat left wrist in the backswing. So I just talked about how having this follow through, wide follow through arc gave me a flexion extension number there on the hack motion of 0. That means my left wrist is flat. The Golfing Machine book talks about a flat left wrist as being an absolute essential part of playing good golf. The flat left wrist is a constant here also in the backswing. And again, so many of you get this wrong. If the wrist isn't flat, it means it's either extended or flexed excessively, so the club face is twisted to a position where it's either too closed or too open. Once your club face is out of sync and in the wrong place, that leads to a chain reaction of multiple compensations that you have to make every time you swing. It's impossible to be consistent if you have to make all of those multiple compensations every time you try to hit your driver. Instead, what we're looking for is to take this lead wrist from a setup position where there is a little bit of extension. That's a tiny amount of angle or cupping in that lead wrist, and that's because of how I grip the club. That's quite normal, a small amount of extension. But by the time I get to the top, that extension number, which sits there at 18 degrees of lead wrist extension, is going to get to the top and be 7 degrees of flexion. That effectively means I've flattened the wrist. I've taken it from slightly extended to flat, and in that example, ever so slightly beyond. But keeping that range very small and very close to 0, a flat left wrist, is a great way to develop club face control. Club face control is ultimately better golf. That's what golf is. The best golfers can control the club face better than the poorest. So a flat left wrist at the top, you can learn what that feels like. There's 0, 1, 0, okay? 0 extension or flexion. That's a flat left wrist at the top. And then transfer to a flat left wrist in the follow through. There's 0 degrees again. That's a flat left wrist at the top, a flat left wrist in the follow through. Guess what? You're going to have more chance of controlling that club face in this part of the swing, which is happening so quickly. There's very little you can do about it. There's not many adjustments you can make in less than 1/10 of a second, all right? But if you get the flat lead wrist at the top and the flat lead wrist in the follow through, the middle part here has a much better chance of being more consistent. So again, you can use the hack motion data, you can use the sensor, the live screen here, to show me, okay, I've got this wrist pretty flat, it's 4 degrees of flexion. That's flat in my mind. Anything within single digits is pretty close to flat. And then as I swing down and through, and this nice wide follow through, there's 2 degrees of extension, 1 degree of extension. Again, that's flat. Train those feels, train the top of the backswing feel, train the follow through feel that we've already discussed, and then try and put those two pieces together in terms of a full swing. Pretty good contact, nice little push draw. A little bit faster swing that time. I got that out to 250 yards, which is decent. Strike felt pretty good. So at the top of the swing there, I was in -3 degrees of flexion, so flat essentially. I started with that 15 degrees of extension, okay, which I said I had originally because of my grip. By the time I got to the top, I was at -3 flexion, flat basically. And then when I hit the ball, -8 flexion, again, flat, slightly flexed. That's a pretty good feel or an ability to replicate what my feel or my intention was. So you can use the data to help you improve your wrist angles, which ultimately will improve your club face control and make you a better driver of the golf ball. You become a better driver of the golf ball, you become a better golfer. Your scores will come down. So if you're looking for more ways to train your wrist mechanics, make sure you check out the link down in the description. There's more videos that will help you to do just that.